Hey guys, Thomas Cicillia Jr. here, aka Mustached Tom, here to review the movie Venom, Let There Be Carnage. If you end up enjoying this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. The second one will head you over to my Patreon page, and any donations are really greatly appreciated. And I'll remind you at the end of the review. With all that out of the way, let's get into the review of Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Now, I had seen the trailer for this obviously some time ago. It probably got delayed among various other movies. And when I first saw it, I was like, okay, this actually does look a little bit promising. But then I saw the film. So yeah, we'll go over it. So the movie starts off in 1996, where we get Cletus, aka Cletus Cassidy, which turns into eventually Carnage, and Francis, who apparently is just Shriek for all intents and purposes. Now, for those who are unaware of who that might be, apparently she was very popularized in the comics. I recognized her more from the Sega game, Maximum Carnage. She's introduced here as well. And their love that is just from meeting with each other, so like, natural attraction or whatever. And all the while she's being taken away, she, with the ability to scream her way out, she has that ability, and the cops don't bother to take any precautions when trying to pull her away, which is already a strange flag to start the movie with, considering that when we see her, they have her isolated, at least for the most part. Yeah. I mean, unless they didn't know that she had powers, which I highly doubt. I don't know. It's her intro's pretty poor, or meh at best. Anyway, so Cletus is being set up for the death sentence because we know he's a killer already, and Eddie is brought in. So this is already like pre-establishing some sort of weird connection these two characters have, even though in the first movie there's no indication that they would know each other. This is just things are just being established just to make this movie even work, which is a little bit, again, bizarre. So moving right along, so Venom is trying to point Brock into these little clues that he's apparently not noticing. And through this little investigation, he finds the bodies that Cletus had hid along the way, and the people are able to uncover the bodies, and he is able to be put back on top, because even in the first movie it was implied that he was sort of fell from grace. So at least that much carried over. However, I find it a bit odd that Cletus would feel defeated or get angry. After all, he kind of set that up. Furthermore, he kind of implied that that's what he wanted, so I'm not sure why he was so angry that this is what what Brock gets after doing this. I guess there's like this little smaller thing that he says in the end of the movie, but I don't know if that's a full like reasoning why. I don't know. It's, again, a lot of pieces already seeming a little bit wonky, and again, this is only in the intro of the movie. Meanwhile, Venom is craving food. Okay, sure. They go to Chin, the woman who runs the clerk shop that they go to. She has no chocolate, which has the substance that I guess Venom requires outside of human brains. But they go after chickens instead. And Venom, wanting more, saves this woman in distress. So, a little hint of like, oh, we're actually going to try to be superheroes or whatever. Again, I can't recall how much of that they do in the first movie. At any rate, we get our next subplot where Anne calls him over to a diner, which she insists on telling him that she has a new boyfriend, and Venom's all jealous. And Anne talks to Venom very briefly, wanting him to keep Brock safe. And Venom wants to help in his own way. So, meanwhile, we cut back to Cletus, and back to his backstory. We learn that apparently he killed his grandma and mother. So among the victims that he has claimed. And this time, Brock goes back to prison where he gets too close in custody. He gets a little bite out of Brock. We see him eat it. Brock is too distracted being pulled away. After the fact, Eddie argues with Venom, because Venom's always, pulling out and whatever. They literally fight each other like a broken up couple. All the while, Cassidy, in the meanwhile, begins his transformation into Carnage, and is born, and gets to kill guards off screen because this movie's not rated R. Which is an odd choice, considering a lot of people have brought that up, and I will as well. So anyways, he has this little cop-up, Brock does. He's talking to him after the fact, and all the while, Brock is trying to figure things out on his own. He separates from Venom somehow. I still don't understand how he did that, or how Venom even did that. And meanwhile, while Venom goes to this party of delinquents, quote-unquote, he makes his speech about, being accepted, the whole LGBT thing, kind of, which I feel Venom was never designed to be that type of character, so I'm not sure why they're trying to slot him into being that type of character. Beats me. It's weird, because Venom is a separate entity from Brock. It's not like... Yeah, it's stupid. I'm sorry, but it really is. Look, I'm all about good LGBT representation, and it is really hard to find out there. I get it, but scenes like this don't do anyone any favors, because it doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't help anybody, and the acceptance part doesn't just quite fit as well. That's the same problem I have with the Crystal Gems and Steven Universe, by the way, or one of the issues I had with Steven Universe. Because we're talking about a separate entity or entities doing something. And, again, that's a whole another video or issue I can talk about later on, but back to Venom. So, after that, Brock looks into this lead, gets a hint, and the cop, or the cop that he has, is moving his way in. Meanwhile, Cassidy rushes into a store, goes into the internet and begins hacking it, suddenly, because I guess he just has that skill now to further the plot and find out the location. And he goes to find her, they make out, and they escape. She screams and kills a helicopter, which also hurts Carnage, obviously. So the Carnage is wanting to shut her up, and Cassidy's like, hey, don't hurt her. So we have a little bit more of a trifecta of issues happening with our villains of the movie, which I suppose is actually kind of interesting. Probably one of the only interesting blocks of relationships going on here. But the setup to the characters just wasn't quite as the level it could have been. Anyway, Anne and Dan, her new boyfriend, move out. And Venom pulls into Chin, I should say, sorry. And the three villains want their three distinct targets. Carnage wanting his father Venom, Cassidy wanting Brock, and Shriek wanting the cop. And they set up their wedding to also set up getting them there. Once there, the wedding is interrupted, and the fighting commences, where there's a little bit of fighting, and I guess that's probably like a few minutes of, oh, something cool is actually happening finally. It doesn't last too long, as some oddities of Shriek using her abilities and shrinking them back into their human forms, and them fighting in their human forms, to Dan helping out in this one instance where he uses fire. Eventually, they're all in a higher state of this church, which is a location that they chose because it's a wedding, and it also has a bell. So they're up there on the further end of the bell. The bell's eventually crushed, and eventually Shriek ends up falling. She's crushed under the bell. It is uncertain whether she survives or lives. Her falling alone probably could kill her. That is possible. So yeah, she's probably dead, most likely. The cop's eyes turn blue at some point in the movie, and I completely just walked out of the movie at the end of it. I didn't wait for an after-credit sequence this time around, so I'm not sure what that's supposed to imply. I really couldn't care less at this point. So Brock is reunited back with Venom after the fight. They go to the beach, where Brock promises to be the lethal protector, which is I'm pretty sure it's a reference to some comic book, but I'm not sure if that's a overall name that he uses more often than not. And that was Venom, Let There Be Carnage. So this movie, unfortunately, has an issue of with the amount of characters they have. I'm not going to say too many. Instead, I'm going to say with the amount of characters they have, I don't think that they do enough with either Carnage or Shriek here. They don't do enough with Anne or Dan. We spend a lot of time with Brock and Venom, and I can see why a lot of people, or some people, would find Venom's dialogue to be a little bit grating. Even more so here than in the first one. I don't know. And personally, I guess I have a higher tolerance because I didn't mind as much. It was probably the most confusing during that moment at the party, and the most unnecessary for him to even have that scene again, because that doesn't make sense for his character. And again, if I have to point this out again, if you're going to have an LGBT character, just create a new one. There's what thing does he fall under on that spectrum? I don't know. Again, he's a separate entity. It's a symbiote, or a symbiote, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Um, Two beings living in one body. Um, and, the mixing of the pronouns is probably something that was in both movies. I guess that's, like, the closest it comes of that. Although, I'll be completely honest, the whole they, them to signal one singular person has always confused me, personally. Um, I'm not sure why people insist on that word singular, or multiple word if it's a singular person. I don't get it. Um, you could always invent a new word, which is something they tried to do, but it didn't work out so well, I guess. But yeah, Venom is a separate entity, um, and I guess, more annoying, uh, with, again, Cassidy not being that well set up, Shriek even less so. Anne is just a follow-up from the first movie, and she gets those little moments here and there. Carnage, his violence, when it does happen, is obviously off-screen. So there's a lot of things that are just where it could have potential. I think due to the uh, requirements that could have worked or could have made this better, it really just shines through as an example of putting too much in one movie without the context of setting up things properly. Um, this could work a lot better, for an example, as a series, a series that has a R or a hard rating, because there are a lot of pieces to set up. But as a movie, there just isn't enough time to set all of that up properly. And there is one movie that I can still name that people should go watch if they want to learn how to make multiple people set up in one movie work. Watch Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. That is the movie that has, 7 different antagonists, and all of it works. They give enough time for each villain. The heroes get enough work. The side characters get enough. And the comedy's just constant and really, really solid. Here, it feels like they rushed a lot of the characters, and that is why a lot of it doesn't just feel quite as... It doesn't get that gravitas. It doesn't feel like the character earned that spot in that movie. Even when they try to make Cassidy a more sympathetic villain, they try to make it seem like he got abused, but, fine. If you're gonna do that, then go all out on it. Show us. Don't tell us. Don't just tell us. Show us that if you're really gonna change that aspect to Cassidy, which I can get why they would want to do that in a short way. They want to make slight differences to the character, and that one isn't that bad, all things considered. But it has to land. It has to be, you have to be like, oh man, I actually sympathize with the character. And then at the end, you're just like, even Venom says in the movie, he's like, fuck that guy. And everyone's like, yeah, fuck that guy. It feels more like that, and it shouldn't feel like that. And it just feels awkward and really underutilized in that sort of way. So, in terms of a score, I'm probably going to have to give this movie 3 or 4 out of 10, somewhere around there. It has a lot more issues going on with it overall. Again, there are a few things in isolation. I think it's hard because a lot of, the action even's off screen, so it can't even complement that much. So yeah, it's not great. And that's my review of Venom, Let There Be Carnage. And if you ended up enjoying the review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my Discord server, the other to my Patreon page. Any donations are greatly appreciated. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.